Here we have a Mantel clock, most likely built in the early 1920s. It was built by Ansonia, a New York-based clock manufacturer, and sold to a jewelry shop in Washington. That happened most likely in the earlier mid-1920s. That's a little bit of history about this clock. Let's talk about now the setup and the operation for this clock. Now, when you go to set up this clock, anytime you transport it, it's very important that you remove the pendulum. That is easy to do. If you open this door, you can grab the pendulum and lift it out. That'll keep it from swinging around and damaging things inside while you transport it. Now, once you've put it in place, you will need to set the time. That's easy to do by just moving the minute hand. Never touch the hour hand and never turn the clock backwards. Always turn it clockwise. When you go to turn it though, anytime you come to the half hour or the hour, it will chime. You need to make sure that that chime stops before you keep turning past that point. So, you're going to turn, it's going to chime 6 times. Now, if I don't wait for it to stop, it will actually stop the chime from going, and that's going to throw things off, and you'll probably have to remove the hands and reset that. It's a little bit more complicated, so it's always best to let it finish chiming before you keep turning it. Now also, when you set this clock up, it needs to be on a level surface. If it's not, you can listen closely and you'll hear it go tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. It sounds like it's limping. If it sounds like that, where it's kind of limping along, then you'll need to adjust it and make sure it's level. Put some pennies under it or something like that. It's set up to tick correctly when it's level, and it'll sound like a tick, 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 tick. It'll sound very even. If it doesn't, you'll need to adjust that. So that's the setup. Let's talk about operation. You'll need to wind this clock every week. It has what's called an 8-day movement. So an 8-day movement needs to be wound every 7 or 8 days. Now when you do that, every week, I always wind my clocks on Saturdays. It's easiest for me to pick a day and always wind them on that day. So pick one day of the week, and you'll need to wind both of these turning points. So the one on the left actually turns to the right. The one on the right actually turns to the left. Okay, counterclockwise. Now, if you forget, that's okay. Put the key in, and if it doesn't feel like it moves at all in one direction, don't turn it that direction. Try the other way. And see here, it turns just a little bit. And so I'm going to turn it that direction. But if it doesn't feel like it turns at all, don't turn it that direction. Now, when you wind the clock, it's very important that you do it safely. This can be very dangerous because there's a lot of energy stored in these springs. I have had a clock unwind on me before, and it almost broke my fingers. It's very, very uncomfortable. So the safest way to do that, to make sure that it does not have any issues, is to put the key in, wind it, remove the key, put it back in, wind it, remove it. So that's safer than winding it and letting it go, because if you let it go, if something were to break, then it's possible that key could unwind all of a sudden and catch you off guard. And that's assuming something breaks. Hopefully nothing will ever break and it won't be an issue, but just to be safe, best practice is to remove the key each time you crank it. Now, also, the general rule of thumb is that for every day that the clock operates, you need to wind 1 full revolution. So every week you'll need to wind it about 7 or 8 times on each side. Now, after the week has gone by, and sometimes the time won't be exact. It's pretty common for a mechanical clock to only be accurate to about 30 seconds or a minute after a week goes by. So you may be off a minute or so every week. When that happens, as you're weekly winding the clock, if it's a little bit behind, just turn it ahead a little bit. That's okay. Or you might need to stop the pendulum, let it wait a couple minutes, and then start it again. Now, if it's regularly getting off by a few minutes in one particular direction, you can adjust that with this adjustment at the top center at the 12 o'clock. Now there's a small end on this key that is used to turn that. So should the clock need to run faster, you put that in and turn it to the right. if it needs to run slower, turn it to the left. Now, when you do that, it's just the tiniest movement that you need. You don't need to turn it a revolution even, just eighth of a turn maybe. It doesn't take much. So that's how you adjust the speed. So those are the basics of operation, setup, and the history of this clock.